She was staring at the ceiling when the word came back. Settled. It had been 3 hours since they got home from the dinner, 3 hours since Ethan said it in the car, and the word kept circling back like a vulture. Claire Bennett lay perfectly still in bed, listening to her fiancé's breathing slow into sleep beside her. The man she was supposed to marry in 10 months. The man who just told her he's settled. The dinner had started well enough. Ethan's firm was celebrating a major acquisition. One of those impossibly expensive restaurants where the menu had no prices, and the wine list read like a mortgage payment. She had worn the navy dress he liked, the one that made her look professional but not too casual, elegant but not trying too hard. She had learned his preferences over the past 2 years, the invisible checklist he never wrote down, but somehow always graded her against. Marcus Chen, one of the senior partners, had approached them near the bar. His wife, a cardiovascular surgeon, had just given a keynote at some medical conference. Ethan's eyes had that shine they got when he talked about success, about people who mattered. Claire had smiled politely, sipped her wine, and when Marcus asked about the wedding, she had said naturally, warmly, "We're so excited. Let me introduce you to my future husband." The phrase had felt sweet in her mouth. Future husband. It sounded like promise, like certainty, like home. Ethan had stiffened beside her, just slightly, just enough for her to notice. But he had smiled, shaken Marcus's hand, made small talk about the wedding venue they had supposedly secured. She told herself she imagined the tension. She told herself a lot of things lately. The car ride home shattered every single one of those things. "We need to talk about tonight." His voice had been tight, controlled, the way it got when he was angry but trying to seem reasonable. They were stopped at a red light, the city bleeding gold and red through the windshield. What about tonight? She had kept her voice light, confused. Maybe he was upset about something at work. Maybe it had nothing to do with her. "Stop introducing me as your future husband." The light turned green. He pressed the gas. Claire felt something cold slide down her spine. "I'm sorry, what? When you say that, when you call me your future husband in front of my colleagues, it makes me look like I settled." His hands were tight on the steering wheel, his jaw set. "My colleagues compare. When you say things like that, it draws attention to the fact that you're not on the same level as their partners. You're comfortable, you're stable, but you're not ambitious like them." The word hung in the air between them. Settled. Claire had turned to look out the window, watching the streetlights blur past. She felt tears burning hot behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not now, not in front of him. Her throat felt like it was closing, like someone had reached inside her chest and squeezed. They had driven the rest of the way in silence. When they got home, Ethan went straight to the bedroom, mumbling something about being exhausted from the week. She heard the shower running, heard him brush his teeth, heard the bed creak as he settled into sleep. And now she lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 6 months. It had started small, comments that seemed helpful at first. "You know, Sarah's wife just made VP at her company. Have you thought about pushing for that kind of promotion? Or, I noticed you wore that dress to the last 2 events. Maybe we should update your wardrobe for these things. Or, when people ask what you do, maybe frame it differently. Risk management sounds so middle management." She had tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was right. Maybe she had gotten comfortable. Maybe she was not reaching her full potential. She had even started looking at job postings for positions she did not want, preparing herself to become someone she was not sure she wanted to be. But there had been a voice, small, persistent, whispering in the back of her mind every time he made a comment. Or maybe he's just ashamed of you. She had pushed that voice away. People who loved you did not think things like that. People who were going to marry you did not compare you to other women and find you lacking. She had told herself that Ethan cared about her success, that he wanted her to be happy, that he was just trying to motivate her. But tonight, the voice was not whispering anymore. It was screaming. 3 weeks ago, at a cocktail party for one of Ethan's colleagues, she had been standing near the kitchen, waiting for fresh glasses, when she heard him talking to 2 other attorneys. She had not meant to eavesdrop. She had just been standing there, invisible in the way that women at these events often were. "So, when's the big day, Whitmore?" one of them had asked. "Next October," Ethan had replied. "Claire seems great. How'd you 2 meet again?" There had been a pause, just a second, but it felt like an eternity. "She's nice," Ethan had said. His voice had been pleasant, conversational. "Nothing too extraordinary, but she's a good person. Stable, you know. Nothing too extraordinary." She had stood there, holding an empty wine glass, feeling like the floor had opened beneath her. She had gone into the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked the same. Brown hair falling in waves past her shoulders, hazel eyes that people said were kind, the navy dress that Ethan preferred. Nothing too extraordinary. She had walked back out to the party, smiled at the right moments, laughed at the right jokes, and when they got home that night, she did not say a word. Because if she said something, he would explain it away. He would tell her she was overreacting, that she took it out of context, that she was being too sensitive, and she would want so desperately to believe him that she would let herself. But now, lying in the dark, listening to him sleep, she could not lie to herself anymore. Settled, comfortable, stable, not ambitious, nothing too extraordinary. The words built a picture, and the picture was devastatingly clear. Ethan Whitmore was ashamed of her, and she had spent months pretending she did not see it. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. Claire slipped out of bed at 1:30 in the morning, her bare feet soundless on the hardwood floor. Ethan did not stir. He never did. He slept the way he lived, confident and undisturbed, certain that the world would arrange itself properly by morning. She pulled on her robe and walked to the living room, sinking into the couch in the darkness. The city glowed through the windows, 1,000 lives unfolding in lighted rectangles across the skyline. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them, and for the first time since the car ride, she let herself really think. What terrified her was not just what Ethan had said tonight. It was the realization that she had seen this coming for months and had chosen to ignore it. She had made herself smaller, quieter, less. She had apologized for things that were not her fault. She had changed her clothes, her words, her ambitions, trying desperately to become whatever version of herself would finally be enough for him. And it would never be enough, because the problem was not her career, or her wardrobe, or how she introduced him at dinner parties. The problem was that Ethan Whitmore had looked at his life like a resume, and she was the line item he wanted to upgrade. Claire thought about the wedding venue. They had put down a deposit 3 months ago, a beautiful estate outside the city, with gardens that bloomed in October. She had fallen in love with it immediately. The way the light filtered through the trees, the stone pathways that wound through flower beds. Ethan had been less enthusiastic. Too rustic, he had said. His colleagues would expect something more metropolitan, more impressive. But he had agreed because it made her happy, and she had been so grateful for that small victory that she had not questioned why making her happy felt like a concession he was granting. She thought about the guest list, carefully assembled over months of negotiation. Her college friends, her co-workers, her aunt who lived upstate. Ethan had opinions about all of them. Her friend Jennifer talked too much. Her co-worker David dressed like he shopped at discount stores. Her aunt was sweet but unsophisticated. Every name had been a small battle. Every inclusion, a compromise. She thought about the engagement itself. 9 months ago. They had been dating for a year and a half. He had taken her to an expensive restaurant, gotten down on one knee with a ring that was beautiful and appropriate, and exactly the size that signaled success, without being ostentatious. She had cried. She had said yes immediately. She had called her mother from the bathroom, whispering with joy. This was it. She was getting married. She was building a life with someone. She was going to be happy. But when had she last been happy? Really, genuinely happy. Not the performative happiness she showed at dinner parties, or the cautious happiness she felt when Ethan approved of something she did. When had she last felt like herself? The question sat in her chest like a stone. She could not remember. There was a photo on the bookshelf, taken 2 years ago on their first vacation together. They had gone hiking, something she loved and he tolerated. In the picture, she was laughing, wind-blown and sun-kissed, her face open and unguarded. She looked free. She looked like someone who had not yet learned to apologize for existing. Claire stood and walked to the bookshelf, picking up the frame. The woman in that photo felt like a stranger now. Where had she gone? When had Claire stopped hiking because Ethan found it tedious? When had she stopped seeing her college friends because Ethan found them unimpressive? When had she stopped reading fiction before bed because Ethan said it was a waste of time when she could be networking or learning something useful? She set the frame down and walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass. The truth was brutal and undeniable. If she married Ethan, this would be her life, forever. Every dinner party would be a performance review. Every introduction would be a test she had already failed. Every year would be a slow erosion of whatever parts of herself she had managed to keep. And children. God, if they had children. She imagined a little girl watching her father speak to her mother with that particular tone of disappointment. She imagined a little boy learning that love meant finding someone's flaws and cataloging them. She imagined herself, 20 years from now, so small and hollow that she could barely remember the woman who had once laughed on a hiking trail. The thought made something inside her go cold and clear, like lake water in winter. She could not do this. She would not do this. The realization did not come with tears or rage. It came with a strange, settling calm, a certainty that felt like the first true thing she had felt in months. Claire walked to the desk in the corner and opened her laptop. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. She opened her email and found the confirmation for the wedding venue. She read it twice, making sure she understood the cancellation policy. Then she drafted an email to the event coordinator. Professional, courteous, final. Dear Sandra, I am writing to inform you that we will need to cancel our wedding reservation for October 14th. I understand the deposit is non-refundable, and that is acceptable. Please confirm receipt of this cancellation. Thank you for your understanding. Best regards, Claire Bennett. She hovered the mouse over the send button. Her hand did not shake. She clicked. The email disappeared into the void. Sent. Done. Irreversible. Next, she opened the shared document where they had been building the guest list. Rows and rows of names, addresses, notes about dietary restrictions and travel arrangements. She scrolled through it slowly, methodically. Then she opened a new document and copied only the guests who were hers. Her friends, her family, her colleagues. She saved it as a new file and titled it simply, My People. Then she went back to the shared document and removed her name from the access list. Ethan could keep his guest list. He could invite whoever he wanted to, whatever he wanted. It would not involve her. She thought about his upcoming social events. There was a gala next week for his firm, a charity dinner the week after, a colleague's wedding in 2 weeks. She opened the calendar they shared and found every event where her name was listed as his +1. One by one, she removed herself. Deleted, deleted, deleted. It was 2:45 in the morning when she finished. The apartment was still dark. Ethan was still asleep. Nothing had changed, except everything had changed. Claire sat back in her chair and looked at the screen. The cursor blinked in the silence. She felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not happiness, exactly. Not relief, but something close to both. She felt like she could breathe. She closed the laptop and stood, walking back to the window. The city was quieter now, the late-night traffic thinning. In a few hours, the sun would rise. Ethan would wake up. He would have coffee. He would get dressed for work. He would kiss her on the cheek in that absent way he had, already thinking about his day. And he would have no idea that the life he thought he had was already gone. Claire smiled. It was small and sad, and edged with something that felt almost like relief. She was not going to argue with him. She was not going to explain or defend or justify. She was not going to give him the chance to gaslight her into thinking she was overreacting or misunderstanding or being too sensitive. She was simply going to let him discover, in the most public and humiliating way possible, exactly what it felt like to be found lacking. The next morning arrived with painful normalcy. Ethan's alarm went off at 6:15, the same as always. Claire heard him move through his routine with mechanical precision. Shower, shave, the electric toothbrush humming for exactly 2 minutes, the closet door sliding open as he selected his suit. She kept her eyes closed, her breathing steady, pretending to sleep. She could not look at him yet. If she looked at him, he might say something, and she needed him to have no warning about what was coming. "I have back-to-back meetings today," he said, his voice already distant, already at the office. She heard him adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. "Probably won't be home until 8 or 9. There's that thing with Reynolds and Associates." "Okay," she murmured, keeping her voice sleepy and soft. The voice of someone who had not just dismantled their entire future in the middle of the night. He kissed her forehead, brief and obligatory, already halfway out the door in his mind. "Love you. Have a good day." The apartment door clicked shut. She waited, counting to 60, then opened her eyes. The morning light was gray and thin, the kind of light that made everything look washed out. Claire sat up slowly, her body stiff from the few hours of broken sleep she had managed after finishing at the computer. She felt strange, hollowed out, but not in a painful way. More like someone had reached inside her and removed something heavy she had been carrying so long she forgot it was there. She made coffee, strong and black, the way she actually liked it, not the hazelnut vanilla creamer Ethan preferred, and she had started using because it was easier than making 2 separate cups. She stood at the kitchen counter in her pajamas, holding the warm mug in both hands, and looked around the apartment. It was beautiful, objectively. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, furniture that Ethan had mostly selected, modern and minimalist and expensive. There were so few things in this space that were actually hers. A few books on the shelf that she never read anymore. A blue ceramic bowl her mother had given her that Ethan said clashed with the aesthetic. A framed photo of her and her college roommate that had somehow survived the decorating purge. This was not her home. It was a stage set for Ethan's life, and she was a prop he was increasingly dissatisfied with. Claire carried her coffee to the couch and picked up her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she needed. Rebecca Torres, Ethan's best friend since law school. Rebecca was one of the only people in his social circle who had ever treated Claire like an actual human being instead of an accessory to be evaluated. They had gone to lunch a few times, just the two of them, and Claire had seen glimpses of someone real beneath the polished exterior everyone in Ethan's world wore like armor. She typed carefully, deleting and rewriting 3 times before she got it right. "Hi, Rebecca. I know this is going to sound strange, but I need your help with something. It's about Ethan. Can we meet for coffee this morning? It's important." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The message showed as delivered. Then, almost immediately, 3 dots appeared. Rebecca was typing. "Of course. Are you okay? I can meet you at Margot's in an hour." Claire felt something loosen in her chest. She was not alone in this. Not entirely. "Thank you. I'll see you there." She showered and dressed carefully. Jeans and a sweater, simple and comfortable. The kind of clothes she used to wear before Ethan started having opinions about her wardrobe. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she become so afraid of her own reflection? Margot's was a small coffee shop 3 blocks away, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Claire arrived first and ordered a latte, finding a table in the back corner where they could talk privately. Her hands were shaking slightly as she wrapped them around the cup. She was really doing this. There was no going back now. Rebecca arrived exactly on time, dressed in running clothes, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She spotted Claire immediately, and her expression shifted from concern to something deeper when she saw Claire's face. "Okay, you're scaring me," Rebecca said, sliding into the chair across from her. "What's going on?" Claire took a breath, then another. Then she told her everything. The comment in the car, the overheard conversation at the party 3 weeks ago, the months of small cruelties that added up to a portrait of a man who was embarrassed by the woman he had chosen to marry. She spoke quietly, steadily, and watched Rebecca's expression move from surprise to anger to something that looked like recognition. "I knew something was off," Rebecca said when Claire finished. She leaned back in her chair, shaking her head. "I've known Ethan for 12 years, and I've watched him change. Law school, that firm, those people he works with, they turned ambition into a blood sport, and he bought into it completely. But Claire, I never thought he would treat you like this. I'm so sorry." "I need your help," Claire said. "There's a brunch on Sunday, at the Hamilton Club. His colleagues from the firm, the ones he cares about impressing the most. I know you're invited." Rebecca nodded slowly. "The partners' brunch? I am. Why?" "I want him to find out that the engagement is over in front of all of them. I want him to feel exactly what I felt when he said I was nothing extraordinary, when he said he settled." Claire's voice was steady, but her hands were gripping the coffee cup so hard her knuckles were white. "I canceled the wedding venue last night. I removed myself from every social event on our calendar, but he does not know yet, and I want him to find out at that brunch, in front of everyone who matters to him." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, studying Claire's face. Then she leaned forward, and there was something fierce in her expression. "Tell me what you need me to do." They planned it carefully. Claire would write a letter, clear, direct, explaining exactly why the engagement was over and what she had already done to disentangle their lives. Rebecca would arrive at the brunch early and place the envelope at Ethan's seat. She would make sure he opened it in front of everyone. And she would make sure that when he tried to minimize it or explain it away, the truth would be undeniable. "He's going to be furious," Rebecca said. "At me, at you. He's going to try to control the narrative." "I know," Claire said, "but I don't care anymore. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. He is." They sat together for another hour, drinking coffee and talking about things that had nothing to do with Ethan. Rebecca told her about a case she was working on, about her sister's new baby, about a vacation she was planning. Normal things, human things. Claire realized how rarely she had conversations like this anymore. Everything in her life had become about managing Ethan's expectations and navigating his moods. When they finally left the coffee shop, Rebecca hugged her tightly. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "And for what it's worth, I think you're extraordinary. Ethan's an idiot." Claire walked home slowly, taking the long way through the park. It was late October, and the trees were burning gold and crimson. She stopped on a bridge over the pond and watched ducks paddling in circles, their movements simple and purposeful. The air was cool and clean, and she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not quite hope, not yet, but something close. Space, maybe. Room to breathe. That evening, she sat at the desk and wrote the letter. It took her 4 drafts to get it right. She wanted it to be honest, but not cruel. Factual, but not cold. She wanted Ethan to understand exactly what he had done, and exactly why it was unforgivable. "Ethan," she wrote, "by the time you read this, you will have realized that I am not at the brunch. You will have also realized that our wedding venue has been cancelled, that I have removed myself from your social calendar, and that this engagement is over. I want you to understand why. For months, you have made it clear that I am not enough for you. My career is not impressive enough. My ambitions are not strong enough. I am not extraordinary enough. You have compared me to other women and found me lacking. You have been embarrassed to introduce me to your colleagues. Last night, you told me that calling you my future husband makes you look like you settled. You were right about one thing. Someone did settle in this relationship. It was me. I settled for being treated like a disappointing investment instead of a human being. I settled for shrinking myself to fit into the narrow space you created for me. I settled for believing that your love came with conditions I could never meet. I am done settling. You can explain this to your colleagues however you want. You can tell them I was not ambitious enough, not impressive enough, not good enough. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. But I know the truth. I was always enough. You just could not see it. The wedding is cancelled. The engagement is over. Please do not contact me. There is nothing left to say. Claire, she read it 3 times. Then she printed it on thick cream paper, folded it carefully, and placed it in an envelope. She wrote his name on the front in her careful handwriting. Then she texted Rebecca. It's ready. Saturday passed in a strange suspension of time. Ethan spent most of the day at the office, which was normal for him. Claire spent it systematically going through the apartment, identifying what was hers and what was his. Not packing yet, just taking inventory. The blue ceramic bowl from her mother, the hiking boots shoved in the back of the closet, the stack of novels she had not read in over a year, the framed photo from college. It was a surprisingly small pile. She texted her mother, keeping it brief. The wedding is off. I'm okay. I'll call you Monday and explain everything. I love you. 3 minutes later, her phone rang. She let it go to voicemail. She could not have that conversation yet. Not while she was still in the apartment she shared with Ethan. Not while she was still holding herself together with nothing but willpower and caffeine. That night, Ethan came home around 9 with takeout from the Thai place they both liked. He was in a good mood, talking about a case that was going well, about the brunch tomorrow and who would be there. Claire listened and made appropriate sounds, pushing pad thai around her plate. She felt like she was watching the scene from outside her own body. This man, talking about his day. This apartment, clean and cold. This version of herself, nodding and smiling. None of it felt real anymore. You're quiet tonight, Ethan said, looking at her across the table. There was concern in his voice, but it was the shallow kind. The kind that expected to be reassured quickly so he could return to more important thoughts. Just tired, Claire said. Long week. You should get some rest. I need to leave by 10 tomorrow for the brunch. It's important I'm there early. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly. You don't mind having the morning to yourself, right? She looked at him. Really looked at him. The sharp jawline, the expensive haircut, the eyes that had once made her feel seen and now made her feel invisible. I don't mind at all, she said. He smiled, satisfied, and went back to talking about work. Sunday morning arrived with crystalline clarity. Ethan's alarm went off at 8. Claire was already awake, had been awake since 6, lying in bed and watching the light change on the ceiling. She listened to him go through his routine more carefully than usual. He was choosing his outfit with extra attention. She could tell by the number of times the closet door opened and closed. This brunch mattered to him. These people mattered to him. Their opinions were the currency he valued most. How do I look? He asked, appearing in the bedroom doorway. He wore a navy blazer, light gray pants, a white shirt with no tie. Carefully casual, expensively understated. You look perfect, Claire said. It was not a lie. He did look perfect. He always did. That was never the problem. He kissed her goodbye, the same brief forehead kiss he always gave her, and left. She heard the apartment door close, heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. heard the elevator ding in the distance. Then she got up, got dressed, and left the apartment herself. The Hamilton Club was in the financial district, an old building with marble columns and the kind of quiet wealth that did not need to announce itself. Claire had been there once before, for a holiday party. She remembered the high ceilings, the chandeliers, the waiters who moved like shadows. She remembered feeling out of place in her department store dress while everyone else seemed draped in cashmere and confidence. She was not going inside today. She did not need to see it happen. She just needed to be nearby, in a coffee shop across the street with large windows facing the club's entrance. She needed to see Ethan arrive. She needed to know that it was really happening. Rebecca had texted her at 9:15. "I'm here. I have the letter. He's going to sit in his usual spot by the windows. When he opens it, everyone will see. Are you sure about this?" Claire typed back immediately. "I've never been more sure of anything." She ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, watching the entrance of the Hamilton Club. Men and women in expensive clothes arriving in pairs and small groups, laughing, greeting each other with that particular ease that came from belonging. At 10:03, she saw Ethan arrive. He was alone. He paused at the entrance to check his phone, ran a hand through his hair, then walked inside with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he fit. Claire wrapped her hands around her coffee cup and waited. Inside the brunch, Rebecca was placing the cream-colored envelope at Ethan's seat. She had chosen carefully a spot at the main table where the partners sat, where everyone could see everyone else. The letter lay there, innocent and terrible, waiting. 30 minutes passed. 40. Claire's coffee went cold. She ordered another and did not drink it. Her phone was silent. She stared at the entrance of the club and imagined what was happening inside. Ethan finding his seat, seeing the envelope, opening it, expecting an invitation or a note about the event, beginning to read. The moment of confusion, then recognition, then horror. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Just 2 words. "He knows." Claire's hand shook as she picked up her phone. She typed back. "And?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. His face went white. He stood up from the table. Everyone's staring. "He just tried to call you. Don't answer." Claire's phone began to ring almost immediately. Ethan's name lit up the screen. She declined the call. It rang again. Declined. A text appeared. "Claire, what the hell is this? Call me right now." Then another. "This is insane. You canceled the venue? Without talking to me?" Then another. "Everyone is staring at me. Whatever you're trying to prove, you've made your point. Call me." She turned her phone face down on the table and looked out the window. A few minutes later, the door of the Hamilton Club burst open, and Ethan emerged, his phone pressed to his ear. He was calling her again. She watched him pace on the sidewalk, his free hand gesturing sharply, his face flushed. He looked unmoored, frantic, everything he usually was not. She had never seen Ethan lose composure, not once in 2 years. He was always controlled, always certain, always 3 steps ahead. Not today. He tried calling her 6 more times in the span of 3 minutes. Then the texts started coming faster. "This is childish. We need to talk about this like adults. You're embarrassing yourself. I said something stupid in the car. I didn't mean it. You're completely overreacting. Answer your goddamn phone, Claire." She read each one with a strange detachment. He was following a script, she realized. Minimize, gaslight, blame. Make it about her overreaction rather than his cruelty. It was so predictable it was almost boring. Rebecca texted again. He left the brunch, made some excuse about a family emergency, but everyone saw the letter before he grabbed it. Marcus's wife asked me what happened. I told her the truth, that he told you he settled. Her exact words were, "What an asshole. This is spreading fast." Claire allowed herself a small smile. Good. Let it spread. Let everyone in his precious professional circle know exactly who Ethan Whitmore was when no one was watching. Let them see past the polished exterior to the small, insecure man underneath who needed to make someone else feel inferior to prop himself up. Her phone rang again. This time, it was a number she did not recognize. She answered cautiously. "Claire? This is Diane Whitmore, Ethan's mother." Claire's stomach dropped. She had always liked Diane. The woman was elegant and direct, nothing like her son's performative sophistication. "Hello, Diane. Rebecca just called me. She told me what happened. What Ethan said to you." There was a pause. "I need you to know that I am horrified. That is not how I raised him. That is not how you treat someone you claim to love." Claire felt tears pricking at her eyes for the first time since this whole thing started. "Thank you for saying that. I called Ethan. He tried to minimize it, said you took something out of context. I told him I did not raise a liar, and I wanted the truth." Diane's voice was firm. "He admitted it. All of it. The comments about your career, the comparisons, the embarrassment. He tried to justify it, said he was just trying to push you to be better. I told him that was the most pathetic excuse I had ever heard." Claire pressed her hand over her mouth, unable to speak. "You deserve better than my son," Diane continued quietly. "I am sorry he made you feel like you were not enough. You were always more than enough. He was just too blind to see it." They talked for 15 more minutes. Diane asked if Claire needed anything, offered to help her move if she needed to leave the apartment, told her she would always be welcome in her home regardless of what happened with Ethan. When they finally hung up, Claire sat in the coffee shop and cried quietly, grateful that the Sunday morning crowd was thin and no one was paying attention to the woman by the window with tears streaming down her face. These were not sad tears. They were relief. They were grief. They were the tears of someone finally letting go of something they had been holding too tightly for too long. By the time Claire returned to the apartment, it was early afternoon. The sun was slanting through the windows at that particular autumn angle that made everything look golden and temporary. She stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the space that had been her home for the past year. It already felt like a place she used to live, a chapter that was closing. Her phone had been buzzing continuously. Ethan had called 23 times. The texts had evolved from angry to desperate to manipulative and back to angry again. She had read them all with a strange sense of distance, like she was reading about someone else's life. The last text had come 10 minutes ago. "I'm coming home. We need to talk about this face to face. Don't leave." She had no intention of leaving. This was still technically her apartment too, and she was not going to be chased out of her own home. She sat on the couch and waited, her hands folded in her lap, her breathing steady. She felt calm in a way she had not felt in months. Clear, certain, free. The door opened 20 minutes later. Ethan came in like a storm, his face flushed, his eyes wild. He stopped when he saw her sitting there so composed, so unmoved by the chaos he was radiating. "What the hell was that, Claire?" His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "You humiliated me. In front of everyone. The partners, the associates, everyone I work with. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I know exactly what I've done," she said quietly. Her voice was steady. "I ended an engagement with someone who told me he settled for me. That's not what I meant, and you know it." He was pacing now, his hands moving sharply as he talked. "You took one comment out of context and blew up our entire life together. That's insane. That's not how adults handle conflict." "You're right," Claire said. "That's not how adults handle conflict. Adults handle conflict by having honest conversations where both people feel safe to be vulnerable. We haven't had that in months, Ethan. Maybe we never did. So your solution is to cancel our wedding and publicly destroy my reputation?" He stopped pacing and stared at her. "Without even talking to me first?" "I tried talking to you," Claire said. She stood up, needing to be on her feet for this. "Every time you made a comment about my career, or my clothes, or how I introduced you, or how I wasn't ambitious enough, every single time I tried to understand what you meant. I tried to be what you wanted, and it was never enough. Because the problem was never actually about me. It was about you. That's ridiculous. Is it? She took a step toward him. You told me I make you look like you settled. You told your colleague I was nothing extraordinary. You have spent months comparing me to other women and finding me lacking. And when I finally decided I deserve better than that, you're angry because I didn't give you a chance to talk me out of it. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time since he walked in, he seemed uncertain. You wanted me to sit down with you so you could explain it away, Claire continued, so you could tell me I was overreacting, or that I misunderstood, or that you were just trying to motivate me. You wanted a chance to convince me that the problem was my perception, not your behavior. I'm not giving you that chance, Ethan, because I'm done letting you rewrite reality. I love you, he said. The words came out desperate, grasping. I made mistakes. I said things I shouldn't have said. But I love you. We can work through this. Do you? Claire asked. The question hung in the air between them. Do you actually love me? Or do you love the idea of having someone, and you're just disappointed that I'm not the version you wanted? He did not answer. He just stood there, his jaw working, his hands clenched at his sides. That's what I thought, Claire said softly. The silence that followed was heavy and complete. Outside, the city continued its Sunday afternoon rhythm, but inside the apartment, everything was perfectly still. I need you to leave, Claire said finally. This is my apartment. My name is on the lease. You moved in 6 months ago. I need you to pack your things and go. You can't be serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. She walked to the door and opened it. You can come back tomorrow when I'm at work to get the rest of your things. But right now, I need you to leave. Ethan stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe this was the first time he had ever really looked at her and seen someone who would not bend, would not break, would not accept less than she deserved. You're going to regret this, he said. It was not a threat, exactly. More like a prediction, a certainty he was clinging to. Maybe, Claire said, but I'd regret staying more. He grabbed his keys and his phone from the table by the door. He walked past her without another word, and she closed the door behind him. She heard his footsteps fade down the hallway, heard the elevator ding, heard the building settle back into its afternoon quiet. Then she locked the door, leaned against it, and slid down to sit on the floor. And finally, she let herself cry. Not sad tears, not angry tears. Something bigger and more complicated. The tears of someone grieving the future she thought she would have, while simultaneously feeling grateful she would never have to live it. The next few weeks were strange and difficult and surprisingly beautiful. Ethan tried to contact her 17 times over the first 3 days. She blocked his number after the 5th call. He sent flowers with a card that said, "I'm sorry. Please let me explain." She gave the flowers to her neighbor and threw the card away. He sent an email with the subject line, "Please read this." She deleted it without opening it. Rebecca called to check on her every few days. "He's telling people you had a breakdown," she reported, "that you're unstable. Nobody's buying it. Everyone saw the letter." "I don't care what he tells people," Claire said. And she meant it. She truly did not care. The opinions of Ethan's colleagues, the people who had made her feel small for 2 years, meant nothing to her now. 2 weeks after the brunch, a letter arrived in the mail. Heavy paper. Ethan's careful handwriting. It was 6 pages long. Claire sat at her kitchen table and read it slowly, a cup of tea cooling beside her. He wrote about his childhood, about a father who was never satisfied, who always pushed for more, who made love feel conditional on achievement. He wrote about law school, about the pressure, about learning that your worth was measured in billable hours and client wins and the prestige of your firm. He wrote about meeting her and thinking she was perfect because she was warm and kind and stable, everything he was not. He wrote about how he started to panic as the wedding got closer, how he looked at his life and wondered if he was settling, if he was choosing comfort over ambition, if he was going to wake up in 20 years and resent her for not being extraordinary enough. He wrote about projecting his own fears and insecurities onto her, about making her feel inadequate because he felt inadequate. He wrote that he had started therapy, that he was working on understanding why he needed external validation so desperately, why he measured his worth by other people's opinions, why he had hurt the one person who actually loved him for who he was instead of what he achieved. He wrote that he was sorry, deeply, genuinely sorry, that she deserved better than how he treated her, that he understood if she never wanted to speak to him again, that he would respect her boundaries and not contact her anymore after this letter. He wrote that he hoped someday she would be able to forgive him, even if that forgiveness did not include taking him back. The letter was eloquent and thoughtful, and probably sincere. Claire read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday she would be able to forgive him. Maybe someday she would even be able to wish him well, but not today. Today, forgiveness felt like something she owed herself first. Diane called a few days later and invited her to lunch. They met at a quiet restaurant near the park, and Diane apologized again for her son's behavior. "I keep thinking about what I could have done differently," she said. "How I could have raised him to be a better man." "You raised him to know the difference between right and wrong," Claire said gently. "What he does with that knowledge is his choice, not your failure." They talked for 2 hours about life and relationships and what it meant to build a self-worth protecting. When they said goodbye, Diane hugged her tightly and whispered, "You're going to be just fine. Better than fine. You're going to be extraordinary." Claire started reclaiming her life in small, deliberate ways. She called her college roommate, Jennifer, the one Ethan had said talked too much. They met for dinner and talked for 4 hours, laughing until Claire's stomach hurt. She joined a hiking group and spent a Saturday climbing a trail she had not attempted in 2 years. Her legs burned and her lungs ached, and she felt gloriously, perfectly alive. She took a pottery class on Wednesday evenings. She was terrible at it. Her bowls were lopsided and her vases collapsed, and she did not care at all. She went to a bookstore and bought 6 novels, stayed up until 2 in the morning reading, called in sick to work the next day just because she could. She started seeing a therapist, a woman named Dr. Patricia Morgan, who asked gentle questions and never made her feel foolish for staying as long as she did. "You weren't weak," Dr. Morgan told her in their 3rd session. "You were hopeful. There's a difference. Hope is not weakness. It's courage." 3 months after the brunch, Claire went to a coffee shop she had never been to before, in a neighborhood she rarely visited. She ordered a latte and sat by the window with a book, and that was when she saw him, Ethan, walking down the street with a woman Claire did not recognize. They were not holding hands, but there was something about the way they walked together, the way he leaned toward her when he spoke, that suggested this was more than casual. Claire watched them pass. Ethan glanced toward the coffee shop window, and for one brief moment, their eyes met. He froze. The woman he was with looked confused. Claire raised her coffee cup in a small, polite acknowledgement. Then she looked back down at her book. She waited for the pain to come, the jealousy, the anger, the feeling of being replaced. It did not come. What came instead was something quieter and more profound. Relief, gratitude even, because that was not her life anymore. She did not have to wonder if she was impressive enough, ambitious enough, extraordinary enough. She did not have to perform for anyone's approval. She got to just be herself, messy and imperfect and entirely, completely enough. Her phone buzzed a few minutes later. A text from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, then changed her mind and opened it. "It was good to see you. You looked happy." She stared at the message for a long moment. She could respond. She could ask how he was doing. She could be polite and cordial and leave the door open for some kind of future friendship. Instead, she deleted the message without responding. Then she blocked the number. Not out of anger, out of finality. That chapter was closed. She had nothing left to say to him. 6 months after the brunch, Claire got a promotion at work. Not because she was chasing it, but because her boss recognized the quality of her work and the dedication she brought to the team. She called her mother to tell her. She called Jennifer. She treated herself to an expensive dinner at a restaurant she chose because she loved their pasta, not because it was impressive. That night, she stood on her balcony with a glass of wine, looking out at the city lights. The air was warm, the first real warmth of spring after a long winter. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, sitting in a car being told she was not enough. She thought about the woman she was now, standing alone in the dark and feeling completely, entirely whole. Her phone rang. It was Rebecca. "Hey, I know this is random, but my firm is having a charity gala next month. It's going to be painfully boring and full of lawyers talking about themselves. Want to come keep me sane?" Claire smiled. "Will Ethan be there?" "Probably. Does that matter?" She thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," she said. "It doesn't matter at all." "Then you should come. And Claire, bring a date if you want. Or don't. Just come as yourself. That's always been enough." After they hung up, Claire stayed on the balcony for a long time, watching the city breathe and pulse below her. She thought about the gala, about seeing Ethan again, this time not from across a street, but in the same room, about standing in a space where she had once felt small, and knowing, truly knowing, that she was not small at all. She thought about the future, no longer mapped out in wedding venues and guest lists and compromises she did not want to make. The future was open now, uncertain, hers. On her bookshelf, there was still that photograph from 2 years ago. The hiking trail, the wind-blown hair, the unguarded smile. She had moved it to a more prominent spot after Ethan left, a reminder of who she was before she forgot. But lately, when she looked at it, she did not see someone she had lost. She saw someone she had found again. The next morning she woke up early and went for a run. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Her breathing found a rhythm. Her feet hit the pavement in steady beats. And somewhere between one breath and the next, between one step and the next, she realized something that made her smile. She was happy. Not the careful, conditional happiness of someone trying to be enough for someone else. Not the hopeful, desperate happiness of someone waiting for permission to take up space. Just happy. Simple and uncomplicated and hers. She was not waiting to be extraordinary in someone else's eyes. She was simply living, fully and authentically, as exactly who she was. And that, she finally understood, had always been more than enough. It had always been everything. Alone in her apartment that night, candle burning on the coffee table, soft blanket pulled around her shoulders, book open in her lap, the silence did not feel heavy anymore. It felt like peace. It felt like home. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful that belonged entirely to her. She was not anyone's consolation prize, not a checkbox on anyone's ambition list, not a disappointment in anyone's story. She was Claire Bennett, and she was enough. She had always been enough. And finally, beautifully, completely, she believed it. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.